it's Will Shannon here, and I'd like to expand on the fourth point, the fourth pillar of vital biology, that being the structural support. So we're outside of nutrition now, aren't we? And we're talking about the muscular system specifically, which will control the bones underneath in the body. And I talked briefly last time about therapeutics and cosmetics. So there's the therapeutic component, which means to heal someone and to be healthy. And then there's the cosmetic component, isn't there, which is to make someone look more physically attractive to the opposite sex. We all come hardwired to look at different ratios in the face and the body to find someone of the opposite sex attractive because they look worthy enough to breed with, to have strong offspring. Now there's a multitude of strategies I could show you down to a millimetre or two, how to arrange your face, how to arrange your body, and I'm happy to go through that in a bonus or advanced section, how to make yourself look irresistibly attractive. But more importantly than that, I'd really like to go through the therapeutic side, cranium, jaw, spinal cord. Your cranial bones connect with a millimetre or two gap. We call these the sutures. Now, the cranial bones move ever so slightly. They're a bit like tectonic plates in the earth. You may have heard of like earthquake lines. So these cranial bones move a little bit, don't they? And when this happens, it means we can have trauma coming down the birth canal and suffer an injury coming out of the birth canal, or if you've had a fall or an accident or someone hit you, these can jam. And now people's face can start moving because some of these bones can be jammed and some can't. This is why we need to, around the world, have genius cranial osteopaths, and it's very few are world class. And I guarantee you probably don't know any. I know you say you know some good ones, but I tell you what, I've met 30, 40, 50 people in my city, and it's very hard to find people who are competent. But if someone's got a motor problem, a muscular problem, that's a muscular problem. Even Parkinson's to an extent is a muscular problem. We'll go into that another time. But well, I won't even use the label Parkinson's. I'll say symptoms that could resemble Parkinson's, look like Parkinson's, or I'll even take a step removed again. I'll say symptoms that look like muscles firing involuntary. Anything to do with the muscles is to do with structure. So anytime you've got an involuntary movement of a muscle, we need to take control of that consciously again. There's Feldenkrais techniques, who was a genius Israeli doctor who invented good ways to work with the muscle. So there's a variety of things that we will integrate. Pilates and Feldenkrais is useful structural. Dentistry and cranial osteopathy are useful fields as well. But I'm going to show you how to be an expert in this, so you're not just relying on outside people coming into business and having to refer people out and lose money and income. But money and income comes behind helping and contributing and servicing your community, and definitely we need to prioritise that as well. So you've got a number of cranial bones, which I will go into in depth in another session, but you've got things like the temporal. Now when the jaw fires, there's four muscles that fire to move the jaw as well. So it's really important that we ensure that people's jaw, people's cranium and everything is stable. You can see visually asymmetry, or where things aren't sitting evenly or symmetrical. You can look at the way people's jaws fire. Are there muscles that seem to move one side or the other? And there's different exercises you can use to bring this back again. What about the bones back here? Are people jam through here? And I'll show you, because the skull is 5.5 kilos, and the skull sits on the first vertebrae. It's if you ever pick up a boxing ball, you ever seen these balls that boxers throw at each other back and forth? These things are really heavy, and this is your head sitting on your spinal cord every day, and most people, to breathe through their mouth, are jutting their head forward. So these are some of the things that I'd like you to assess on upcoming sessions, knowing that it creates a drag on people's head and cranium based on where things are sitting, including the tongue, which is a muscle. You swallow a couple of thousand times a day, which means if your jaw or cranium, particularly your jaw, isn't correct, you can place pressure on your neck and all sorts of things. And because most people have come down the birth canal a certain way, everyone, I believe, needs some sort of proactive dentistry, not so much with the teeth, although that too, but with the jaw. And we would like people's jaw and teeth to be in a good position. But you don't just want to be a dentist that drags people's teeth around and then stuffs up the plates in their skull. But definitely people with white teeth and straight teeth generally can look cosmetically more attractive as well, and that's an element that you can bring to it as a practitioner, knowing how to choose a competent person who can work with the oral facet of the face, and I'm going to show you how to do that in upcoming sessions. The other thing that I really want to add is the importance of the spine. I remind you that every single nerve runs down the spine, and vertebrae can be called what's called subluxed, which is a partial dislocation. Everyone has what's called a scoliosis, or a bend in their spine. If they get that label, they feel very significant, don't they? To go, oh, I've got a scoliosis. Everyone has a twist. through their spinal cord based on asymmetrical muscles. It's very important at least 2-3 times a week, if not every day, that people are doing symmetrical exercises, so these angles of their body, that the emotions that are in the muscles are making them feel good. I'll go into in upcoming sessions the 4 muscles that fire when the jaw fires, but in a nutshell, when the jaw fires, there's 4 muscles. There's what's called the masseter, the temporal, and the medial pterygoid and the lateral pterygoid. Medial and lateral pterygoid, masseter, temporal, which is on the side of the head here, which everything hangs off. And then those are the 4 that should be firing. But if people are getting headaches, it's because they're overworking, they're creating a drag on some of the zygoma through here and some of the occiput through here. The top jaw sits on something called the sphenoid bone. The sphenoid bone is what every bone in the skull connects to, and you change the shape of that bone, you change the shape of people's face, therapeutically and cosmetically. Now, because the sphenoid sits on the top jaw, you change the shape of someone's top jaw, you can change the shape of their face. Now, I could show you how to stick your thumbs in the roof of your mouth and change the shape of your entire face, but your face will drag back to a point of weakness or a point of most tightness. If you've got a tight neck, tight jaw, you're going to find that people's cranium moves that way. That towards the breathing, everything tightens here. We have a hooked nose, we have a receding jaw. So I'm going to show you how to give your children dentistry down to the mathematical ratio, therapeutically and cosmetically, to get their face in an extremely attractive position beyond just the work of the teeth, which very few practitioners currently practice in the world. And also knowing that every time you assess a client visually, look at their posture, but also look at the symmetry and asymmetry in their face and watch the way that their jaw fires and see it, something fires funny. Ask them if they're getting head pain, where the head pain's coming from. Does it feel musculature? Does it feel blood vessel? Is it a dirty bowel that probably needs to be cleaned often in most of the cases? So these are all things that I would like you to take into account as a practitioner, but know that we go from average to being world class once we assess this 4th. Structural support is important. Don't think that your job as a healer is just to take on the oral route. Your job is to take on the structure, make sure people's structure is strong. You can change the shape of people's eyes. You have a muscle that sits on every side of the eye. People have a lazy eye, right, middle, left, middle, up, middle, down, middle, right, middle, left, middle. Train these muscles. Sometimes people come with this life with a weak eye muscle. No one ever gives them exercises to do it. If you came in with a flabby bicep because you'd had a broken arm, you would sooner work that and retrain that. Your eyes hang off the optic nerve in the brain. There's other aspects as well, and I'm not stupid or simplistic enough to say that eye exercise is the only thing that's going to support a lazy eye. But it does show up when people get more tired, doesn't it? And I've helped more people than you could imagine, you know, with these lazy eyes to help them fire again. Now, when people's thyroid runs overactive, their eyes also tend to bulge, which means that you know, there's often a swelling or inflammation around the eye. So just know that you've got the way people's eyes, you've got the shape, you can reshape the face. Every single muscle in the face you can reshape with a knife or without a knife. You can reshape with cosmetic surgery or without. And there's a multitude of ways that I want to show you as a practitioner where you can embody not only health and vitality and sleep less and things like this, but also have your cranium in such an immaculate position that when people look at you, they can't help but be drawn to you in certain cases, and you know, in terms of how you're feeling and things like that as well. So know that every time you talk, you're firing your jaw, you're firing your tongue, you're firing these bones back here, you're firing temporal and medial and lateral pterygoid. Medial pterygoids sit here. You'll often see when people get fearful, these medial pterygoids fire. It's like a micro gesture of fear, which also puts a pressure on the brainstem to compress, tends the muscles here to compress it. Same with when people get fearful or surprised, they lift their eyebrows, which is actually the bones firing around the occiput or the cranial skull to protect it. So I'll go through micro gestures and things another time as well, how to read. I'm going to give you an arsenal of tools. By the time I'm finished with you, you're going to know micro gestures and body language and dentistry and a multitude of fields that someone walks into your office, you're going to have hopefully, I'm not going to use the word solution, but or even cure, but you're going to know, remember I talked about AA, we analyze, we administer, you're going to know how to administer things structurally, orally, dentistry, cranially, and it doesn't mean that you have to do these yourself, but you can point them to a practitioner who's going to be able to help them, can't you? And I think you're probably beginning to see the power in this life working out all the people that probably can now do this around the world by the time you're seeing it. I'd like you to jump on board so you can be an example in your community as a healer. The old school, you know, they go to the medicine man. It's beyond now just taking something. I want you structurally to know how the lymphatics work, how the circulation works, at a very macro level as well, so that we can go into details and know how the nerves fire and across that synaptic cleft. And at some point I will give you all that detail and you'll be a walking talking encyclopedia. But when you know the big level, you just know you give someone a nerve herb from God's cabinet, and this part of the body begins to heal, doesn't it? And you think about the oceans that we were designed to bathe in, you know, all the herbs and leaves that would fall in there, their nutrients would be water and salt extracted, and we'd be bathing in this healing multitude every day. Or the water that we were meant to drink out of the ocean that is now too salty that you can't drink it anymore. But at some point you're meant to drink pH salty water out of the ocean with herbs extracted into it, oils and volatile oils and fats and things out of these leaves, and God only knows internally and externally the amount of nutrients you've been saturating yourself with every day. And right now the most nutrients you get is from a hamburger. You've probably seen some of the studies around the world as well in terms of some of the major corporations now that have been exposed for the poor quality meats that they use, and you know, the rejected fat and the ammonium hydroxide and things they use to preserve that, and carbon monoxide to keep it looking pink. Because when an animal dies, doesn't it, the colon germs swarm from the colon to degrade that. That's what parasites are. Life is not designed to live forever, it's designed to go back into the dust so we can have another life cycle. So once this bacteria and yeast and mold sets in, it swarms us to break us down. The second an animal dies, the primary parasites from the colon, it starts getting degraded. So any sort of dead living organism is very parasitic dense, including fish. And I'm not necessarily anti-meat or going to go into that on this occasion, but I just want to bring some general awareness to you in some of the things that you can treat, and know that, you know, you can look in the mirror and your cranium looks a certain way, but you can resculpt your nose, which is what's called the vomer here, which is bone and cartilage, right through there with a knife or without. The shape of your bone comes from the top jaw and how these occipits are sitting on the skull. There's a lot of things that you can do. If you're a woman, I know you're particularly conscious of how you look because you've been culturally and genetically conditioned, and a man will find you more attractive and want to take care of you, and you'll be more useful to society based on how you look and your energy. And as a man, you're conscious of it as well, but you've also been conditioned how you provide and different things like that as well. And I also know that most people look in the mirror every chance they get, and the reason that is just because, you know, we're associated into ourselves, and that's part of the human experience, isn't it? Because the first thing that a competent coach can do, I was going to use the word therapist, but I use the word coach, is disassociate someone so they can see what's going on. If you've got no other tool in your toolkit, if you just say, look, I want you to imagine you're sitting over there and tell me all the things that aren't right with this person, all the things that are, all the things you can see, just get some objective. And because we don't have that second or third position objective, people look in the mirror every chance they get, because life's associated. It makes life more interesting, doesn't it? We have to look out of our own eyes. We have to see what's going on around us. So thanks for bearing with me, like you always do. And I hope I've given this to you in nuggets of information. So the next time that we tune in, I can give you pieces of information that are not only useful to you and can change your life and everyone around you, help you embody this and be strong even when you don't feel like being strong, but also give it to you in bite-sized chunks, so you're going, Will, tell me what's coming next so I don't overload you or overwhelm you. In fact, I'm trying to give you such a small thing that's such a natural continuum that you can learn when you don't know that you're learning, and by the end of it you just pick it up because you know what you're doing. I'll talk to you soon.